Alec Lasley joining now from thehoosier.com. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you doing?
Great. Lots going on to talk about is for Indiana basketball. Obviously, tomorrow they take on Illinois, number 16 Illinois at home in Bloomington, Indiana, which will be it's a big game. For Indiana, it is a game that to me moves them a seed line on the bracket. If anyone's bracketology, that's not just because if they were to win that game, but you will couple that with the win over Purdue, the win over Ohio State, the fact that everyone knows they had them by 22 at Wisconsin. Blowing the lead, it sucks, but I think anyone with enough basketball sense knows that, all right, they weren't grown up enough. They were just too damn immature yet. But they've grown since then. They've changed since then. This win would solidify that. And they get Wisconsin again. As a matter of fact, like everyone that is in front of them in the Big Ten standings, which I think are 5 teams, they have a game against yet before this season ends. 3 of them, or two of them at home, 3 on the road, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously it starts with tomorrow. I think everyone this is probably one of the games that they've circled on their calendars at the start of the year, outside of Purdue, as one that Indiana fans thought they would need to have, especially at this point in the season to kind of not only make the NCAA tournament, but obviously kind of cement themselves in the NCAA tournament. I don't think a lot of people thought they may start out with 7 conference wins already at this point. So this is more so for, like you said, more for seeding than it is to really cement themselves in the tournament. But regardless, it's a huge game for Indiana, and it's one that Indiana has a really, really good shot of winning. They play a very similar style of basketball, Illinois does, to Purdue, with obviously the big guys, and then they have some guards who can shoot it from the outside. But it's going to come down to if Trey Jackson-Davis and Michael Dorr play at the same level that they can play together. We saw Michael Dorr obviously step up against Purdue when Trey Jackson-Davis was out. Obviously, Trey Jackson-Davis can't get in foul trouble as early as he did against Purdue and expect the same result to happen. I think Illinois just has a few more playmakers with the ball than Purdue does.
Kofi Coburn is such a different animal than, say, Zach Edey. Zach Edey, I think that he's still unathletic enough that you can affect him. Kofi's a little beast, not a little beast. He's a big beast.
Yeah, the only difference is obviously when you take Kofi out of the game, they take a significant step down with either Payne or whatever other big man that they actually throw out there on the floor. It's not a Travion Williams or anything like that. The whole front court for Purdue is a different type of animal. Obviously, Kofi does a tremendous job in himself, averaging like 22 and 12 right now. And he's going to be a difficult task. And obviously we'll talk to Mike Woodson a little bit later on today to hear exactly kind of what he's going to do scheme wise and what they're going to do to try to slow down Kofi Coburn. But Trey Jackson-Davis said they're going to have to throw a lot of bodies at him, and that's what they're going to have to do. But it's going to be another big game for Michael Dorr if he can step up and play like he did against Purdue.
Yeah. Also, I mentioned a little bit ago, guarding the perimeter 3-point shot. Frazier and Plummer, last game out, they were not good. They were, I think, a combined 4 of 17 for Illinois. And Illinois is not a team that can be devoid of perimeter shooting and only count on Coburn. There's not a lot of games where there's enough teams in the league in the Big Ten that they'll beat Illinois if it's just Kofi Coburn. I think Illinois is Indiana is one of those teams that if they're able to slow their guards down and not allow them to shoot, that Kofi Coburn alone is not going to beat Indiana.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing is which Andre Curbelo is Illinois going to get. Obviously, we've seen him at times be, sensational with the ball. We've also seen him at times be early turnover prone. And he's been coming off the bench a lot for Illinois. dealing with a lot of injury issues and COVID issues this season. So he really hasn't been able to get into a groove. Still averaging nearly 5 assists a game. Turnovers are a little bit down just because he hasn't played as many minutes as he would have at this point last season. But Trent Frazier's done a tremendous job kind of substituting in for Curbelo a lot at the point guard position, averaging nearly 4 assists a game. And it's really allowed him to kind of take a step back from that main scoring role that a lot of people thought he would have to have this season. His shooting percentage is up slightly from last year, shooting a solid kind of decent percent from three, even though he takes a lot throughout the game. But his playmaking with the ball in his hands, kind of getting into the paint, breaking down his defender, and then finding either Grandison or Alfonso Plummer out on the perimeter has really kind of elevated Illinois to a different level. And I think the emergence of Plummer this season, which has been one of the best pickups, I think, around the country through the transfer portal, has really allowed Trent Frazier to kind of have a much different role, that he's a lot more comfortable with, and not one where you expect him to have 15 to 20 a night, because he's not going to get you that over the course of his career. He's been, anywhere from 9 to 12 a night, which is great. But now you allow him to kind of play with the ball in his hands and be more of a playmaker for his teammates, which I think suits him better and suits this Illinois team better.
The one good thing that, and you kind of mentioned that Illinois does not have, they don't have, I don't know if what it is, if they don't have a Race Thompson. Race is becoming a much more rounded offensive player that, if that continues, will continue to be scarier for Big Ten defenses. As I don't want to act like he has become this prolific three-point shooter, because he has not, but he has raised his percentage. He's shooting 23% right now. For the as deep of a hole he was in, that's pretty damn good. But the sheer fact that they have to respect that now. And Illinois has to, whomever they're playing, has to respect it. Opens up the middle. It's going to change things for this Indiana offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the big missing piece for Illinois that they had last year, who kind of played that Race Thompson role, was DeMonte Williams. Shot about 46% from three, played kind of that stretch four role. Super undersized, about 6'6", more like kind of a PJ Tucker, who has spent numerous years in the NBA, kind of playing that undersized stretch four, who is really tough defensively. But he's had a really bad year this year, only shooting about 30% from the perimeter, only averaging about 4 points a game, playing 31 minutes. So it's a struggle when you look at what Illinois is trying to do with him, because he was that guy last year. It'll be interesting to see kind of how he matches up with Indiana tomorrow, because I think that's a really good matchup for both sides there on both ends of the ball. But yeah, the way Race Thompson's been able to stretch the floor here as of late, shooting 63% over the last 3 games from three. Obviously, I don't think Indiana fans expect him to shoot that percentage moving forward, and he doesn't have to. As long as he shoots right around that kind of 33, 34% mark, which when you look at his misses this year, they haven't been bad misses. He hasn't forced a lot. He's been pretty open when he's taken those threes. It's just, for the most part, they've just missed. They've just been off a little bit. But the stroke has always looked good. It seems like he's always had the confidence in at least taking at least one a game when he has some of that available room. Now they're just dropping. And I think with him, it's just continued confidence from the coaching staff, which we heard post-game against Maryland. Just the sheer fact that this coaching staff and these players are confident that when he shoots the ball, it's going to go in, or they have confidence in him to make every other, or at least to keep shooting the ball. And that's something that I don't think you saw with Race Thompson over the last few years. But it's something that is just going to continue to expand this Indiana offense and allow them to play a lot more outside in a way that I think is somewhat better for them. We saw it against Purdue, obviously much different type of team with the big men that they have. But I think at times Indiana just relies way too much on Trayce Jackson-Davis to make a move on the post, and the rest of their offense tends to stand and be stagnant. And when they run it more from the guards in and from the perimeter players in, it allows Trayce Jackson-Davis to kind of get a little bit more movement inside the paint. And that's when you see a lot of those dump off passes from Xavier Johnson or Rob Finney or Trey Galloway that allow for easy dunks and easy putbacks, even if they are just misses at the rim.
A great point here by Real Doc Bob. Illinois is second in offensive rebounds in Big Ten games. Indiana 11th. Need to not give them all these second chance opportunities, because a game like this is probably going to be tight and you're going to need every opportunity yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's the biggest thing with Illinois. If they're making shots, they're going to be a tough team to beat regardless. But the fact that even if they do miss, they're still a tremendous offensive rebounding team. A lot of it has to do with Kofi Coburn. But for the most part, overall, a lot of their guards do rebound the ball at a decent level. Obviously, Curbelo is super crafty in there. Like I talked about earlier, DeMonte Williams does do a solid job rebounding the ball. And then you have Jacob Grandison, who I think could mold into that Race Thompson role. Plays that stretch four right now, kind of long three. They tend to play a lot more of those hybrid forwards. But it's going to come down to if the guards of Indiana are going to be able to rebound the ball. Obviously, we know Trace Jackson Davis is, Race Thompson will, Jordan Geronimo will when he's in the game. But you need Xavier Johnson. You need any sort of guard who's in the game or perimeter player for Indiana to be able to rebound the ball, just due to the fact that Illinois has 5 or 6 guys who can crash the boards and do it at a high rate.
How important is Trey Galloway going to be in this game? I don't want to jump over Christian Lander. He's going to be obviously playing minutes. Last game, 4 personal fouls in 10 minutes. So he's got to be careful. Obviously, the speed is still something. Speed of the game is something he's getting used to. But if that's the case, they're going to have to have someone else with the ball in their hands. And I assume that's probably going to be someone like Trey Galloway. If it's not, when it's not Xavier Johnson.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think moving forward, no matter what the matchup is, Trey Galloway's an extremely important piece to this team, with or without Rob Finney on the floor. But even more so with him, missing time here for the injury. The big thing with Christian Lander is I'm a little bit worried if he does get in this game, the speed of Andre Curbelo, the defensive pressure that he likes to bring to the floor, especially if he is coming off of the bench, I think could be worrisome for Indiana and Christian Lander. He still struggles with quick point guards who like to speed you up. And that's where he gets a little bit out of sync. He likes to throw the ball away at times. You see him attacking a little bit too deep just to try to get past the pressure into the paint. And I think that's one thing that Trey Galloway, while he does do that sometimes in attacking a little bit too deep, he still knows what he's going to do when he gets there. And you'd much rather have a miss than a turnover, because of the fact that you have Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis right there for rebound putbacks. And that's one thing that I think you're going to see, why you're going to see Trey Galloway a little bit more than you probably would Christian Lander, just due to the fact that Andre Curbelo really likes to get up into opposing point guards. And I just don't know if Mike Woodson has all of that confidence yet in Christian Lander to not turn the ball over with a high-intensity point guard on the opposite side of him.
Michael Durr, another question on a lot of fans' minds, but he's been kind of absent here of late. I have not heard any mention of any injury. Of course, it's not a surprise. Someone mentioned before he'd been dressed on the bench at times. So I'm not sure what's going on there, because we haven't really heard a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just matchup, right? I mean, you've heard Mike Woodson talk about matchups all season long, and you heard him before the Purdue game. This is why they brought him in. And that's the biggest thing with him. You're going to see his minutes go all over the place, just due to the fact that he can stretch a little bit and hit that free throw line extended jump shot. But he doesn't do a lot outside of that, offensively at least, right? He has been foul prone depending on the matchup. And that's why when the teams are smaller, you're not going to play him as much. He doesn't do as well in pick and roll defensive sets than maybe a Ray Thompson or a Chase Jackson Davis would. And you want to limit his minutes when you're going up against teams that have a lot more stretch forwards than true traditional postmen. That's when you obviously saw him play significant minutes. Regardless of the foul trouble or not, you were going to see significant minutes from him against Purdue, and you saw what he was able to do when you had one-dimensional big men. And so I think you're going to see him obviously have some sort of a role regardless of what the foul trouble looks like against Illinois.
Jordan Geronimo, another guy that we've seen him have success against people much bigger than him. Luka Garza, Kofi Coburn's kind of a different animal than that. I'm not saying coming in, but he will be playing. I'm not sure what impact are you expecting from him in this game.
I think a huge one, and that goes back to, again, talking about Illinois having a lot of those versatile stretch fours that you probably won't see. Trace Jackson Davis be able to defend at times. You want Trace Jackson Davis to be matched up down in the paint, Race Thompson to be out on the perimeter, but you're still going to have obviously spot minutes there. And I think Jordan Geronimo is going to play a huge role, especially if Illinois decides to go a little bit bigger in terms of playing potentially two bigger guys on the floor, having him play more of kind of out on the perimeter to be able to switch off to any of those guards if they do decide to switch on screens, which I think they will at times, just due to the amount of ball handlers that Illinois will probably throw out on the floor. And his wingspan, his length, his athleticism is obviously going to make up for any sort of deficiency that he has in terms of potentially being a little too aggressive. But I think he's, every single game, Jordan Geronimo and Trey Galloway coming off the bench are going to play significant roles. It just is a matter of how long those minutes are and how many minutes they play. But no matter what, they're going to have a very specific and significant role going into each matchup because they are so versatile on the defensive end, and they can do a lot of different things for Indiana when it comes to switching, which Mike Woodson is going to want to do against a lot of these Big Ten teams if they do go for round one.
And something that I think I don't want to call it the linchpin, but could be the surprise for this team taking a bigger jump toward the end of the season, maybe in the tournament, would be for Miller Kopp, Parker Stewart to do things that they haven't been doing this. And I'm not saying they're not doing anything, but the production from them has been really inconsistent. If they were to start producing and creating a fourth or fifth option for other teams to deal with, that will continue to make this Indiana team even much more dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest question there is what role does Miller Kopp really have in this offense right now? We haven't seen really any sort of positive offensive production from him since that Syracuse game when he went for a career high. In Big Ten games, he's really, really struggled, which I think is a surprise to a lot of people, just coming from a Big Ten school originally, right? I think a lot of people expected him to play a lot better than that, but only averaging about 4.5 points a game in Big Ten play. And that's, a guy who came in as, I don't want to say a specialist, but talking to him, obviously, in the transfer portal before he came over to Indiana, the biggest thing that reason why he chose Indiana is Mike Woodson saw him for more than just a shooter. A lot of people marked him as just a shooter, and when you're marked as just a shooter, you need to be able to obviously make shots. And that's one thing that he has not been able to do, and he has not shown the ability to create off of the dribble. Not to say that Parker Stewart has as much this year, but much better three-point shooter. He has obviously morphed into that role as a specialist in terms of being able to knock down almost any sort of three that he sees. But he's shown the ability in the past to be able to break down defenders off of the dribble at times. And you've seen that at times at IU this season, his ability to kind of get into the lane and be a little bit more aggressive attacking downhill. I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to Parker Stewart and Indiana's ability to get him more shots and get him open more easily than kind of what he's been able to do at this point. I think Miller Kopp is what he is at this point just for this season. I think there's just not a lot of space for both of them on the floor at the same time, especially if Miller Kopp's not hitting shots. And so that goes into the question that we talked about a few weeks ago, if there would be any sort of lineup change potentially to bring Miller Kopp off the bench or to move Parker Stewart, going to the bench to see if they can kind of create any sort of additional momentum for Miller Kopp here down the stretch.